Alafia, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents, the H3O Art of Life show. And I gave this show an interesting title because I wanted to have some fun with my guests who are friends as well as professionals who are in a very good, beneficial business. I named the show Health and Its Alternatives, because I know that you have Alternative Health of Beverly Hills, Chicago as your business. And I also know that there aren't any alternatives to health. So I thought we'd just have a little laugh. Dr. Hugh Jenkins, yes, and Gwen Jenkins, Dr. Hugh Jenkins' mate, and the author of an interesting cookbook called Recipes for a Neo-Southern Lifestyle. There's so much to discuss and so much to learn, but I see you've got a little gadget in your lap. So why don't I get that out of the way, because I don't know a thing about it and you can tell me what it is.
Okay, what we have here, it's called Zyto Compass. And the compass, what it does is by putting your hand on this, it's connected to a laptop or a computer, it will scan your body through your hand contact, galvanic skin contact. And it will pick up, the computer will send a signal to the body, and the body will send a signal back called bioenergy markers, which is the energy which controls the body system, the digestive system, the immune system, the reproductive system, et cetera, et cetera. And the computer will pick up 400 million impulses per second and design a nutritional program for you in 8 to 10 minutes. Now, this technology is nothing new. This has been around for over 20 years. The medical industry has been using it, and they compared this with the biggest hospital in the world in China, which has over 3,000 patients in the world. 3,000 patients in the hospital, and they took the patients through a 4-day intensive physical exam, blood work, et cetera, and then they had them go on the compass, and they found that there was comparable of 97% comparable information results.
Okay, is this invasive? Do you have to worry about radiation and all the kinds of stuff that you get usually when you go to hospital labs or laboratories and get all these different tests? Do you have to worry about having some injury done to you if you put your hand on that?
Well, that's one thing about this, and I've been in practice 29 years, and I love to do non-invasive evaluation testing because patients have gone to the medical doctors and had enough evasiveness. So by putting their hand on this, the only thing that is the computer sends a signal back. It's like you touching your mouse, so you're not going to get electrocuted like this. Most of the energy is coming from your body, you know. And when we have people having problems scanning this, is because 1, they're dehydrated, they haven't had enough water to drink. 2, their hands are dry, and 3, their hands might be cold, or 4, they might not have enough contact on here because they have to put their fingers on there. But the thing about it, I've done this evaluation on young people as young as 5-month-old babies and got the results.
Okay.
And even I do house calls, and I did a house call to a man, and he was bedridden. So couldn't do the regular things that I do, so I put his hand, all I had to do is lay the compass under his hand, turn on the computer program, and it scanned his body through his hand and gave me all the information I needed.
Okay, so now I'm going to put my hand on this, and you're going to have it connected to the computer,
right,
and it's going to design a nutritional program, which means it's going to tell me what I'm deficient in, whether I need this or that vitamin. What is it going to tell me?
Well, what it's going to do is that a lot of people they'll go to their medical doctors, and the doctor do an evaluation, for example, if they have high blood pressure, and write them out a prescription for that specific medicine for that specific patient. The patient will go to the health food store and say, do you have something for high blood pressure? The person who's telling, they're talking to, clerk or whoever, doesn't know their medical history. So they're going to give them something for the disease instead of for their body. What this is going to do is it's energy medicine. So it's going to pick up your bioenergy fields.
Okay.
So if the energy is out of balance, out of range it's called, we have 76 biomarkers. If those markers are out of range, it's going to scan the products that are in the computer and pick up the ones that will bring those bioenergy back into range and get the body, not just for the high blood pressure, but for everything that's going on in that body.
Okay, so after you have used the regimen, after you use the products that the the system
compass.
indicates. And then you can actually go back and test to see if there's greater balance, or if you're getting results, or if something needs to change. Don't you have to come back and do another
Yes.
evaluation?
And on the video that's on the screen, because they're watching the video while they're taking the scan, it's going to say to take the supplements for a minimum of 3 months, 90 days. And then you retest them and see how it is. Now, it's surprising that my oldest patients, my elderly patients, have less out of range, and my youngest patients have the biggest ones out of range. Okay? Because the health of our generation, younger generation, is bad. You know, you're seeing high blood pressure and diabetes and obesity in kids, children, pre-teens, and in grade schools, and they're dying from old folks' diseases.
I'm scared to do it, because you're probably going to find that I've got so much stuff out of range. You know, I'll be in shock when you probably tell me I need a shopping bag full of stuff.
Most of the time, at the very most, the biggest amount of supplements that anyone has ever taken was 9. Okay. We've got seniors out here that are taking up to 20 different medications, and they're dying from overdoses from the medications. Younger people that are dying from the overdoses of medication. There's 8 causes of disease. Number 1 is nutritional deficiency and dehydration of good pure water. This will let us know if you're deficient in certain things to bring you back in balance. Okay. And for example, we've had people with high blood pressure, and we can program it for body systems, which is easier than programming it for an individual product. We put them on a program. And one person, it said that they needed something for their urinary system, not their circulatory system, because it was a urinary system, the kidneys and bladder, that were out of balance, that was causing the symptom, the high blood pressure.
Well, you know, I know that you're right about this, because I have a friend whose husband was having a problem, and the doctors could not decide what was causing this problem. And he went to a dermatologist for something entirely unrelated, and the dermatologist told him what the problem was. So apparently, when you have specialists, they don't always know their specialties.
Right,
so
exactly.
they can't, even though they're supposed to be the person who knows all about this particular aspect of your body, they don't know always what's wrong with you. And he was just lucky, because the dermatologist wasn't supposed to know this. You know, what the dermatologist found had something to do with what an orthopedic doctor was unable to diagnose. So to be able to go in to have, because that's the first part, to solving any problem, is defining the problem. Diagnosis, if the doctor cannot diagnose, whatever he's treating is, if it does some good for the patient, it's like a happy accident.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Because because diagnosis is at the seat of anything.
That's
if you cannot diagnose it, then you cannot treat it properly, and consequently, whatever you're doing might be having some benefit on something, but the thing that needs to be addressed isn't getting addressed.
Well, one thing about that, I'm glad you brought that up, the diagnosis. You have to find out the cause of the problem, and there's 8 causes of disease, and they're from, like I said, number 1, deficiency of nutrients. Everybody needs a basic nutrition, and dehydration of good pure alkaline water, up to including stress, which the medical community has admitted that could be the cause of many, if not all, diseases.
It's all my problems.
Okay.
But I think that, you need to take care of people when you need to help people know how to take care of themselves.
Right.
And you need to help them take care of themselves when they have not taken care of themselves and have gotten into problems. But the cookbook that Gwen has is a means of trying to stay out of your office.
Okay,
See,
right.
the thing is, I think that you're working at cross purposes, because if it's left up to her, everybody's going to be all good and balanced, and they when they come in to see her, they're going to wave at you and keep right on walking. Tell me about this book. You said you had a health challenge that made you behave yourself.
Yes,
finally.
Yes, in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with toxic shock syndrome twice, and I almost died twice. The first time I went to the hospital and they told me after I pulled through, that if I hadn't come to the hospital the day that I came, the next day I would probably have been dead, because I had that many toxins in my system. And it was the same thing the second time that I went. The second time was due to, back in the day, a lot of people probably don't remember this, when they had the Rely tampons, and you could use them and they would could cause you to have toxemia. It was from that. But so what I decided at that time, the second time, because strike 3, you know, that's it. And I didn't want any more strike 3s. So I decided that I needed to make some changes in my diet and in my lifestyle. And
so this is a lifestyle book then?
That is a lifestyle book.
Okay.
That happens to have over 100 recipes in it. And the reason the recipes are there is to help a person transition from a standard American diet, which is not the best diet for your health, to a healthier diet. You know, something where you have more plant food-based food than animal-based food.
How are we going to convince people that it actually costs less, it's actually more convenient, it's actually more flavorful to eat good, healthy, organic food? How do people just think it's going to be a bother, it's going to be a lot of work, it's going to cost a lot of money, and you know, I'm satisfied with what I'm eating now, so why should I change? What argument can you give?
You know, it's very difficult to argue with the person when they're in very good health, because they think that they're invincible and nothing's going to change, and they haven't related the food, the kind of food that they're eating, to, they don't have anything to relate it to. But when people start to get into poor health, it's a lot easier to help them see that, because then you can show them the relationship between something that they ate, you know, too many fats, too much fried food, too much meat, which puts a toxic load on your heart. If they're having heart problems, they can see it a little easier when they go through something. Like if I had not had the toxemia, if I hadn't had the toxic shock syndrome, I would never have probably changed my diet. I probably would still be eating the same diet that I was eating that caused me to have all the problems. Too many sweets, because I was down south. Too many fried foods, too many sweets, too much sweet tea, well that's a sweet, but too much meat and not enough raw vegetables, you know, too many overcooked vegetables, because we haven't been taught to eat the right way, I don't think. I think people nowadays, they eat for convenience. See, I grew up like in a crossroads. At the beginning, when I was younger, we spent a lot of time with my grandmothers, and they would cook every day. They would prepare food, so I know both the good side and the bad side. But then in my mother's generation, that was during the time that the food companies started to grow up and everything was industrialized, so they could go and get TV dinners, very popular, and they could go, you could go into town, because we lived in the country. When you went into town, you could get a hamburger and some fries and a soft drink. Well, that was a treat, you know, because it was different. We weren't used to eating like that. We ate beans and cornbread, greens, everything was made from scratch, and so we were used to this way of eating, and really that was the best way. But it's time consuming, especially if you are not used to doing it. But actually when you start to cook again, it's very relaxing, so you have to look at the benefits of it. That kind of life, just to be in the kitchen, it helps to de-stress you. And a lot of people say that they like to make bread or they like to bake because they can quiet their thoughts in their mind, and it helps them to relax.
And you can refocus.
You can
Whatever
refocus.
the thing was that was concerning you, you've got to pay attention when you're in your kitchen preparing stuff. It requires that you pay attention. And I do understand, I'm a Southern girl, I do understand what you're talking about, the Southern diet. But the advantage that the Southerners had against the urban dwellers here, you said you were out in the country, which was an advantage. The urban dwelling people in the North, in particular, have the problem of being sedentary. They don't get exercise. So at least if you were eating all of this fried food, all of this peach cobbler, all of this good stuff, you were drinking water from a well or a spring, and the water was pure. you were getting a lot of exercise.
Right.
The air itself was
cleaner.
less toxic. The soil was not full of all kinds of chemicals and what have you. So you didn't have as great a buildup of toxic material in your system, and you did have the opportunity to work some of that off, because if you were living in the rural, you had some stuff to do that required you to do some sweating.
Right, that's
Right.
true.
But here
is
we're
true.
sitting on a couch watching television,
Yeah.
you know, and people are not walking, people are not exercising, and people are not drinking pure water. You know, you used to say, Dr. Jenkins, what you flush today, you'll be drinking tomorrow. And when I would say that to people, they would just frown all up. Because
Oh
you used
my
to
gosh.
be really, that was something that you used to really emphasize, that if people could do nothing more than to change the water that they drink. What are you saying nowadays about water?
Saying the same thing. Like I said, the number one cause of disease is deficiency and dehydration. Now, the old formula for drinking water was 6 to 8 glasses of water a day. And then they've upgraded that. They said you should drink half your body weight in ounces. So a 200-pound person should be drinking 100 ounces of water a day. But the real formula it should be is that you should be drinking 75% of your body weight in ounces. So a 100-pound person should be drinking 75 ounces of water. Because, for example, there are many causes of disease. We talked about high blood pressure, but more and more people are having digestive problems, from acid reflux to colon cancer. The number one cause of constipation is dehydration. Waste can't go through a dry tract. What the body does is that it will take the water from the colon to help to hydrate the body. So if you're not drinking enough water, you're drinking toilet water, okay, from your colon.
From your own body.
Exactly, exactly, you know.
So you're dealing with that, because I know you have water at your, what kind of water
It's
is it?
alkaline.
Bionic water?
Bionic water.
Bionic water.
It's called alkaline water.
Okay,
It's
alkaline water, which you recommend because we have a highly acidic
Environment.
body,
Diet, yeah, and
environment and internally,
Right.
because we eat a lot of cooked food and so
Very
forth and so on.
acidic.
So you know, you have to take health seriously.
Right.
You have to, you know, there is no alternative to health. Either you are a healthy person or you are a sick person, and there are degrees of illness, but you can operate at the maximum of your potential if you're well. The less well you are, the lower your potential gets, and then you can't do things. You know, you don't have vitality. You
Right.
can't bounce out of bed and go running down the street. You know, you can't go all day long, and you can't shop till you drop because you're tired, you know, and worn out. And we want to live, don't we?
Yeah, and the number one cause of fatigue is dehydration.
Okay.
Right.
So when people start feeling tired, they should go drink some water.
They should drink some
Some
water.
water.
The number one cause of hunger. Most people that say I'm hungry are more thirsty. So they say if you drink 32 ounces of water,
Right.
you know, and then wait 20 minutes.
Right.
If you're not hungry again, you are more thirsty.
Right,
Okay.
right. So when you feel hungry, go drink some water.
Go drink
too.
some good
when
pure
you feel
water.
sleepy, when you feel hungry, go drink some water.
That's right.
Help me fight the battle against the bubbly. You know, I have some relatives who are giving their children, who are allowing their children to have carbonated beverages. And I am just jumping up and down, because not only did you know something about the sugar content from looking at the label, but now there are studies and reports that sit right on television, right in your face, and they tell you about the sweeteners that are being used, the aspartame and other sweeteners that are being, the high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
You're getting, children are obese for a reason.
Right.
They are.
Not so much because they eat a lot, but the things that they're eating.
Well, let's back it up even more so.
Okay.
And I've seen this just recently in the last 6 months, that the pediatrician are telling these young mothers with newborn babies not to give them water. Okay, and like those 2 babies I was telling you that I scanned with the compass,
Right.
both of them had problems with constipation and asthma. And they
Okay.
were not, the doctor said, well, they're getting enough water from their formula. They put sugar in the formula. So they're
Right.
starting to perpetuate diabetes in these kids at birth.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
one of the causes of obesity in children is dehydration of good pure water.
Okay.
In reference to the alkalinity of
Children
the
never
water.
want to drink water.
Right, right, because they're addicted to these pops and these Kool-Aids and all the
Right, right.
other things. Reference to the alkalinity, you know, older people, I guess grown-ups,
You
are
may
drink.
say that in my presence.
Well,
I'm
I
not
meant to say
ashamed.
grown-ups compared to children. Okay, is that they drink coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 32 ounces, not 32 ounces. It
32
takes
cups.
24 cups of alkaline water to neutralize 1 cup of coffee. Now you give these kids pop, which is twice as acid as coffee. They need to drink 48 cups of alkaline water to neutralize 1 cup of pop. That's
Right.
3 gallons of water.
Right. And you come to a restaurant, and the first person who shows up at that table will say, "Well, what will you have to drink?"
Right.
Right.
And people just take. I don't drink anything with my meals. I just have that kind of habit. I always drink my water separately, and I don't care for carbonated beverages, so I don't have anything to resist. But I'm just saying that people expect, if they're going to have a meal, they expect to have something to drink. It's almost like drinking your dessert
Okay,
along
right.
with your meal, you know?
It really is, because they get so many calories during the day from the drinks that they have. And people are not even aware of that. Those drinks are not calorie free. Water is calorie free,
Well, talk about
but drinks are high
the
calorie.
diet sodas.
Oh, the diet sodas.
Those are low in calories, aren't
Oh,
they?
no.
But see, obesity is a nutritional deficiency disease.
Okay.
You give somebody something low in calories, which is also low in nutrition,
Okay.
they go deeper in debt but bigger in size.
Okay.
The average American is overfed and undernourished.
And the food supply that we have is deficient. It's because the soil is depleted
Yes.
and it's highly chemicalized, and you're getting genetically modified foods as well.
And you know something, the thing about it is that Americans don't complain enough, because in Europe they won't accept that. But here in America, you know, people are very complacent. I don't know what causes that, but we have genetically modified food. We don't even know that it's genetically modified.
Because it's not marked on the label.
Right.
It's not marked.
right,
And if they
right.
have genetically modified food in Europe, it has to be marked.
Right.
You have to know, as a
Right.
consumer, you have a right to know
Right.
if your food is genetically modified or not. And do you know when they genetically modify things, they put a molecule of a bacteria in the food?
Oh my.
And prevents
Exactly.
it from replicating.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're eating that, and so we wonder why we come up with all these infections.
Right.
It's
Right,
really,
right,
you know,
right.
we have to be more, we have to be more educated. We have to read more and not just accept what we hear, you know, on the television shows that we watch or the radio shows.
Right,
Not
right.
informative shows like
Right.
this are really good for getting information out to people, but people don't watch this kind of show. They want a reality show or, you know, an entertainment
want
show.
entertainment.
An
Yes,
entertainment
yes,
show,
yes.
but they're not getting the information that
Yes.
they need about maintaining their health.
Yes. And you know, when you think about when I read that it was possible for them to actually make a hybrid using tomatoes and cells from a pig.
Oh.
That in other words, here you are trying to be a vegetarian, and
Right.
you have a tomato that may in fact have some cells from a pig in it.
Yes.
So you don't really know when foods are genetically modified. It means that things that couldn't mate or things that couldn't combine in nature now can be combined. And so now you have all kinds of combinations that, you know, the body knows the difference. You know, that's the wonderful thing about the human body knows whether or not this is something that is natural and something it can use, or whether it's something that it should reject. And the poor liver, talk about the
Oh,
liver,
the liver.
Dr.
Well, that's why
Jenkins.
we're having more and more food allergies, because the food has been tampered, and then the liver is the master filter. So everything that goes in your body, you inhale it, you absorb it through your skin, you eat it or you drink it, has to be filtered through the liver, because the liver holds 1/3 of the body's blood at all times. So any disease from high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, including cancer, the liver is involved.
Right.
But it's such a fantastic organ that 80% of it can be destroyed through disease or removed through surgery, and it can totally regenerate itself.
Right.
Okay? But when it comes to the essence of wellness, one of them is cleansing, detoxification. If we don't clean out the liver, then we're not going to clean out the body.
Right.
People go through colon cleansers.
Right. And that's cute.
Right. And colon cleansers, I tell folks they're good, colonics are good, but it's not a complete program.
Right.
That's why with the Zyto Compass, it gives us a complete thing. If we put
Right.
somebody on, we're talking about obesity now, put people on the weight management program, everybody that I've tested, it doesn't make a difference if they were overweight, underweight, or normal weight, everybody needed a cleanse.
I'm sure.
Everybody.
I'm sure. Because, you know, you have to do spring cleaning in your house, and you live in this house, and so you're going to have to do something with that as well.
Right.
And you know, another one of my friends who is also a doctor says, would you let someone who treat you who is not managing their own health? You
Exactly.
know, here is an overweight doctor who's got you in a weight management program. Well, you know, physician, heal thyself.
Exactly.
So first of all, you need to have somebody who is competent, and the way that you can tell right away is you just look at them.
Right.
And if they are managing the very things that they're trying to tell you they're going to manage for you, that's a good sign. The other thing I've found is that birds of a feather need to flock together. You simply have to associate with people who think in the same direction. It is very difficult to hang out with folks who want to eat the wrong stuff.
It is.
You know, because if you're trying to go over for dinner and nobody is a vegetarian but you, they want to tell you, well, take the meat out of the vegetables,
Right, like
and have that. Or one time I thought I had solved the problem, and I said, well, I'll just eat the Jell-O.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
That was years ago.
Okay.
That was before I knew that Jell-O was made. Found out that Jell-O was made up of ground up bones.
Right.
Right.
Which was, but I looked over at the table, I couldn't see a thing, because everything on the table had been sabotaged. The salad had bacon bits in it.
Oh.
And, you know, now I said, why you sabotage all the food? You know, there should be something. And so they said, well, we've got to make something for you. I said, why not just say we're going to make something and everybody eat it? You know, why is it that I'm not diabetic, so you're not making some special thing for me? This is something that everybody can eat and enjoy. So now it's gone to, well, why don't you bring
Something.
something for yourself? And I did bring something for myself. And I got, the funniest result was that people were pointing out the difference between that's vegetarian. That's vegetarian.
Right.
This is the real McCoy over here. That, you know, somebody would start to serve some, that's vegetarian, you know, just so you know. So it's hard to find a lot of people that want to eat right, or even want to experiment for one day with 1 or 2 dishes of eating right.
You know, I think that what people don't know is history. If they studied history a little bit, they would find that the 1900s, the early 1900s, the whole planet ate a plant-based diet. And then industrialization came into our society, and with it came the slaughterhouses. And so meat used to be something that only rich people would be able to have every day. And now common people were able to have meat more often, and then the advertisers got in the game. So they started making these commercials showing a woman cooking meat at every meal. So then people thought that it was fashionable to eat meat, but it was never the way that people ate. People ate a plant-based diet.
We had some meat because we had a smokehouse.
We had some
We
meat,
had a
but there was
smokehouse,
not
but
meat
you couldn't
every
pig
day and
out on
everything.
meat.
No.
Because there wasn't enough of it. You're right, there wasn't enough of it. And I remember how we looked forward to Sundays, because Sundays we could get to have chicken.
Right.
You know, now you get to have chicken in all forms, and nuggets and tenders and legs and
let's
wings.
not even talk
and,
about those.
You know, all day long you can run in and out of stores and dine on chicken.
Have you heard about the meat glue?
Meat glue.
Meat glue. They take meat, pieces of meat that are left over from chickens or pigs or cows or fish, and they, maybe they can't sell them anymore, so they're going to put them all together. They sprinkle this meat glue on there, which is an enzyme that's made from cow blood and pig blood, and they sprinkle it on the meat, and then they put it on in this saran wrap, and they put it together carefully, and they wrap it and they roll it, and they put it in the refrigerator and let it sit overnight, and then they take it out and they've got this like a meat log, and then they slice it, and it looks like those little round, what are they called? Filet mignons.
Patties.
Right, yes. And then now they sell them to people.
Well, you know, I got suspicious years ago when I learned that animals that were not allowed to be free-range animals, that were penned up and cooped up in little spaces and couldn't move around and what have you, would develop tumors and all kinds of disease because of their inability to eat natural food, because they were being fed chemicals rather than corn and things that they ate, worms, as you pointed out. So animals were becoming diseased, and I read that the people were being allowed to cut off the disease part and sell the rest of the animal. Now, when I was growing up, my mother went to the poultry market. She bought a whole chicken that was sitting there that she could feel under the feathers, feel the breast, and the chicken was slaughtered there, and the feathers were removed. She brought a whole chicken home. We never had any parts of chicken, parts of food. So then it made me wonder, if they can cut off the diseased parts of animals and still sell the rest, isn't that why we're suddenly seeing so much of the animals being sold in parts? Now, instead of seeing whole chickens, now you see wings, you see thighs, you see legs, you see breasts, you see all the parts, because some of the parts have to be discarded. I'm sure that that's what the reason had to be.
That's so true.
Yeah, if you look at Food Incorporated, it really opens your eyes to a lot of the manufacturing of our food.
And a lot of foods, you know, it used to say chicken breast. They don't say that anymore. They say chicken, the white meat of the chicken. Which means it's the leftovers. They can bleach it and make it look white. They can put the meat glue on there and sell it to you as a chicken nugget. Parts are parts.
And then, you know, in some cases, these signs don't even say chicken. They have initials. They have initials on the chicken place. So you say, okay, now they used to spell it out. Now they don't spell it out. So am I to think that, you know, I'm pay attention to details. But the thing is that you have to take care of yourself. I was looking in your index, and one of the things I saw in here was Bragg's liquid aminos. And what's your comment on Bragg's liquid aminos? Because I thought that was a nice substitute for sodium, but it's high in sodium as well.
Well, I like it. You know, you're not supposed to use that like a substitute for soy sauce. Which is what I don't use soy sauce, I use the Bragg's. But you're not supposed to use a lot of it. You don't want it to taste salty. You just want it to, the Bragg's gives food like a bottom. You know, they kind of make it taste complete. Full, but you don't want to use a lot of it.
So you want to use it in drops, like an eyedropper.
Drops, just like, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 drops. If it's a big pot of something, maybe you can use 8, 10 drops in there. But if it's just for one person, you only need to use 2 or 3 drops in there. And it just gives it a nice flavor, but you don't want it to taste salty.
fasting, you talking about Dr. Elvenia Fulton and fasting, and this is her son. Dr. Elvenia Fulton raised this boy, you know, and her thing was fasting. And I got an email which I sent to you because somebody was suggesting that we go on a 40-day fast for freedom.
Right.
And I said, wait a minute. You can't, please don't jump up and go on a fast. A fast has to be supervised. It has to be monitored. You have to go on it properly. You have to be monitored during the fast, and you have to be removed from the fast if you're beginning to have adverse reactions. You know a lot about fasting.
Well, Dr. Fulton, my mentor, God bless her soul, she was one of the pioneers of natural healing, okay? And she was the world's authority in fasting. When I studied under her, I saw people come from all over the world with all kind of health problems. They were wheeled in stretchers, wheelchairs, crutches, and in the 5 days, she put them on the 5-day cleansing diet, which I learned, and I specifically make that for the individual. And then people that had never fasted in life, she put them on 21 days of fasting. And in that period of time, in the 5 to 21 days plus the breaking period, I saw miraculous healings. Because in the Bible, they say prayer and fasting will heal everything. Now, Gwen can tell you her story about when she first came to me years ago.
Right. I came to Dr. Jenkins because I had a problem with infertility. I had gotten married recently, and I had been married for about 5 years, and I had not been able to carry a baby full term. I've been pregnant a couple of times, but aborted the baby very early in the pregnancy. So I went to Dr. Jenkins. He put me on a 40-day fast, and for the 5 days before the fast, I was on the cleansing diet. I could only eat fruit and drink this tea that helped to get a lot of the toxins out of my system. And then for 40 days, I didn't have anything except distilled water with lemon and a little bit of honey or maple syrup and encapsulated herbs. And at the end of that 40 days, maybe another 40 days, that's like a month and a week, and another 3.5, 4 weeks, I was pregnant, and I carried the baby full term. And in the process, I lost 5 dress sizes.
Oh,
so
my
I was
goodness.
also fine.
Okay.
But I felt great. You know, people are concerned. They say, well, I couldn't do that because, I think I would starve. You don't starve. After the 3rd day, you don't even think about eating.
Let me tell you, I had the experience of a fast. And the first couple of days, your body's saying, well, what's going on here? What are you doing? You know, but after you get over that threshold, as you pointed out, then you begin to have a surge of energy.
Yes.
You have a surge of well-being. You feel happy, you know.
Euphoric,
you feel energetic and so forth and so on. And I was feeling so good, I thought, I may never eat again. Because this was people know what it is not to feel sick to death. But most people don't know what it feels like to really feel good, to feel great, to feel well.
Right.
Most people have not experienced that. So to feel great is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
And you're still getting people to fast?
Yes, and what Gwen says, and I like to, every time we do presentations together, since we are a team, is that, and I learned this from Dr. Fulton, I'll give you the scientific version and let her tell you about the other one. What happens with fasting is a process called autolysing, self-eating. The body will eat the fat, the wasteful, and the disease cells first. The disease cell, all abnormal cells first, and before it uses up anything else. So it's using up like internal fuel. Now what Gwen was saying, remember you were saying how it was like internal surgery?
Yes. It was like an internal surgery because I had some the scarring, the toxic shock syndrome that I'd had, and all the problems that I'd had early in my 20s had caused a lot of scarring inside of my body. You know, and it just really was interesting to me. But the fasting removed all of that.
So, you know, who wouldn't want to be well, and especially if they knew somewhere they could go and they could trust somebody who's got a track record. 29 years is a long time. You don't look but 29, Dr. Jenkins. And that's one of the things I've always had against you, is that you refuse to age. And every time I see you, I don't care how long it's in between, you never change, and I just don't know why you don't, because you should.
Well, that's
maybe just a little white on the beard.
Well, I think he probably used chalk before. He went in the bathroom. I don't know what he did.
But fasting, it also reduces down your aging. It slows down the aging. So they've done scientific research on rats and gave them half their caloric intake, and it increases their life by twice as much. So we tend to eat ourselves into our graves.
Right. And I've so often, when you go to funerals, and especially if the person who died is a person who has had a lot of illnesses and has maybe had problems with obesity and has had major health problems that you could know about, and you hear the minister talking about God's will, God called this person home. Sometimes I just really wish that there would be a progressive minister who would not say those kinds of things, because sometimes we are imposing our will on the will of God by deliberately disobeying what is in this Bible about seed bearing, the herb bearing fruits that are here for our consumption.
Yes.
So you have the clergy who stands in the pulpit and teaches all kinds of stuff, from every book and every chapter and every verse. But then you can go downstairs at the end of a sermon in the church basement and get everything that you shouldn't have, which will certainly have some influence on God's will for your life, because God has given us laws to obey, has given us the wisdom and the information that we need to be able to access those laws. And then if we're going to ignore them, then we can't blame God for not letting us just continue our folly. But I do wish that people would understand that death not only hurts the dead person, but it hurts the living, because people mourn and stress. You talk about stress. There's nothing more stressful than severe illness or death in a family. It's stressful on everyone.
Especially when the person is young. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, I put before you this day life and death. Choose life. So when I read that, then I'm hearing that we have a choice. It's not always that God chose death for us. We chose death. They're both there, but we get to choose. So my old minister in Texarkana used to say, everything that you do, every second of your life is a life or a death choice. Every decision that you make, the thoughts that you choose to think, the food that you choose to eat, the things that you choose to say to a person in a situation. These are life and death decisions, and we are choosing that every time we make a decision. We make decisions all the time that are not healthy, not good for us.
I have one relative who has a severe digestive problem that has never been diagnosed by anybody. But I know it's a digestive problem because it has to do with elimination. And so something ain't going right about that. And so I suggested that one of the things that you can do to help yourself is that you can eat food that will digest itself. Detergent foods, like fruits will pretty much take care of themselves. Raw foods will pretty much take care of themselves. They will make it through. They don't take up the whole body supply of enzymes to be digested. They will pretty much be able to go through and get out on their own. But this person is so addicted to certain kinds of meats that the consumption of these meats takes precedence over the pain and suffering that is associated with the indigestion. It's hard to believe that somebody could know that they're going to be climbing walls over indigestion
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see,
and still keep putting stuff in their body that won't digest.
I see people smoking who have, you know,
respiratory problems.
respiratory problems, but they continue to smoke.
But
What
the,
is
the
that?
weakest system is the digestive system because we abuse it so much.
Okay.
And with having a problem with elimination,
Right.
eating red meats takes
no.
4 days to digest.
No,
So
no.
one meal, for example, if you have bacon and sausage in the morning, that's
Mm-hmm.
4 days. If you have a hamburger or hot dog at lunch, that's 8 days. If
Okay.
you have a steak or a pork chop at dinner, that's 12 days of digestion for 1
Okay.
day of eating.
Okay.
So the stuff is sitting in there.
Right.
And they have found that colon cancer is directly related to beef.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And so if the person wants to continue having this dis-ease, digestive problem, and well, I got to take laxatives so I can have an elimination.
Right.
People don't have a deficiency in laxatives. They have a deficiency in enzymes, like you said.
Right.
One of our colonic therapists had a patient, and when the patient was so clogged up, when she broke up that with the water,
Right.
it went into her system and clogged up her system. And she
Oh.
calls the company, wondering, oh, what's going on? What do I have to do? Do I have to expend some money to get my system unclogged up? They told her, you know, all you have to do is put a bottle of food enzymes in there. She put them in there, and she could literally see the enzymes dissolving the fecal matter, and the system went through.
Really?
So people need enzymes.
Right,
To take
right,
food
absolutely,
enzymes.
absolutely. For one thing, some of the things that we eat just use up the supply. Like I think probably potato chips are,
Oh,
you know,
fried food
Oh,
for sure.
gosh.
are among the culprits, you know. And when if we teach our children by example how to eat and how to enjoy the food that they eat that's healthy for them, then they don't have to get old and have to fight an addiction.
Right.
Because it's much harder to remove a bad habit than it is to start a good habit and maintain the good habit. So I don't know, you know, the First Lady says she's, you know, she's very interested in the problem of obesity in children and
Right.
type 2 diabetes in children. What is this type 2 diabetes?
But type 2 is adult onset diabetes.
It means you went through your whole life, never had diabetes, and all of a sudden you get it as an adult.
Right, because the pancreas, being that and the liver, produce more enzymes than any other place in the body. So as you get up there in age, then there's this depletion of enzymes, because as you process food over 118 degrees, the first nutrient destroyed is the enzymes, then the vitamins, then the minerals. But because we're giving our kids nutritionless foods, then they have no enzyme production. And so they're getting this inflamed pancreas, inflamed digestive system, and then you have inflamed disease, diabetes.
You
high
talk
blood
about
pressure.
inflammation in this cookbook. In
Yes, I
this
do.
lifestyle book.
Lifestyle
I refuse
book.
to call this cookbook.
Yeah, I do talk about inflammation because that is a big problem in this society. I think that when I look at the Southern diet, because that's where I'm from, and you know I base a lot of stuff on there, that when I look back on what caused me to become ill, because you know I grew up, my grandmothers, they cooked really good meals, and we had water. We didn't drink a lot of other things. We just had water to drink. Well, in my mother's generation, I started spending more time around her. There was Kool-Aid, and there was, you know, we had that every day. Everybody wanted that. And then there was more processed food. We had hot dogs more. We had those frozen pizzas that you put stuff on and put in the oven. We had more popsicles and these kinds of things, and she would just let us have as much of it as we wanted, not knowing that it was harmful, because I don't believe that she would have done anything that was
No.
harmful, but advertisers said that it was okay. So, you know, you believe they believe what they saw on television. So, you know, I realized, and then, you know, we'd gotten away from drinking the water like my grandmother would make us drink water. And we would just go out to the well and draw a bucket of fresh
Right,
water.
and get a dipper.
And get a dipper of water whenever we were thirsty. But now we had running water, and then we had Kool-Aid though, and then we had soda pops. So people stopped drinking water,
Right.
and they started drinking all these things, and so it made caused dehydration, as Dr. Jenkins was talking about, and then we weren't eliminating the way we were before because we were eating all I remember going out in the yard, my grandmother would say, go get that red pullet over there. And, and I would wring the neck and then let it stop jerking and grab it and take it in there. She'd have a pot of hot water for me. I would stick it down in there and it would loosen up the feathers.
And
I would
pull them
pluck
out.
the feathers and she would dress the chicken and then she would fix that for dinner. That's what we'd have for dinner. But, we don't eat like that anymore.
No, we don't cook from scratch.
We don't.
Children don't know how anything comes into being.
They don't.
It's in a box, it's in a can, it's in a package, it's in the fast food franchise, but people don't go get a mixing bowl out, get a sifter out, get mixing spoons, get measuring cups. People don't get out that kind of stuff because when I hear phrases like throw it in the oven, throw it on the grill, I don't want anything that anybody threw anywhere.
Exactly.
If you're not gonna, I think you actually do something to food when you are angry and you cook.
Yes.
I think you should be in a very good mood when you make something, and you should make it with love and want the people you're making it for to have it. I don't think you ought to just be overwhelmed. You came home from work, you didn't feel like doing anything, so you just threw something in the oven or you threw it in the microwave, and you just got these people off your case because you have too much to do. It's a shame that Big Mama don't live at home with the family anymore.
That's it. The cycle was broken because I remember growing up down south, there was always an adult relative in the house.
Who was cooking?
There would be a spinster aunt. She always was, the family took care of her. She was at someone's house and she would cook and help take care of children and help clean. And there was always somebody there to prepare a meal, a cousin who, maybe in the city, they lost their job or whatever, they would come back down south, and then we would make room for them, and they would be there in the house, and everybody would be working together to make everything right. Like I was telling a friend of mine the other day, when I was growing up, I used to go out in the garden in the summertime. Like we could have gardens in Texas all year round, but I would, in the summer specifically, I remember, I would go out in the garden in the summer and I would cut a head of cabbage or two, depending on how many people were going to be eating. I would pull some onions. I would dig some potatoes. I would get some radishes.
Okra.
Yeah, radishes.
Tomatoes.
I would go out there and I would pick everything that I was going to use for the meal.
I've had that experience. I know exactly what that feels like, and then run from the garden snakes.
But that's when the food was fresh. Because them to say fresh, produce or fresh meat in the grocery store, especially here in Chicago, the question you need to ask the grocer, well, what time was it cut or what time was it killed? And if they can't answer that, it's not fresh.
Well, they can't answer it because they don't. Now greens come in a bag.
Right.
You know what?
Why would you buy greens in a bag and then not wash them?
Greens have a brand name now.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but the thing is that you need these kinds of pep talks. You need this kind of association. You need to have people who are practicing what they preach and who are practicing things that are healthy and good. And it's a good thing you all found each other.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm sure he wants to talk about this all day. And it seemed when I heard you say pull it, I knew you was truly from the South, because people who aren't from the South don't know that vocabulary.
Right.
But the thing is, the fact that you all share interests, that you are actually able to balance each other, is a very excellent thing. When you say people work together and they did things and they filled in the blanks and nobody felt like a burden. Nobody felt as though they were useless or worthless. Everybody contributed something, and so people were healthier. So you're a good example as a couple as well.
And the thing about that whole thing is too, even though we may not have had a whole lot of money, I always felt rich. I never felt like I was poor.
Well, I didn't know I didn't have anything either. When I used to tell the story that they would take up a collection at school for the needy people, and it was not until I got to be an adult that I realized that we were the needy people. We were taking bottles back to the store to get the deposit so we could bring money to school
give to the needy people.
So I didn't know I was one of the needy people, but we seem to have done okay, and
We did.
It didn't look like we missed out on too many things.
But see, when we were doing
Not at all.
that was so we could have some money in our pocket.
Right.
I remember
or go
taking
pay
the bottle.
show fare.
That's right.
Go skating
You know,
ring.
take a pretty lady out to lunch.
Right,
Now,
right.
one thing that I liked about our God bringing us together is that in doing that, we changed the name of the business.
Okay, what is it now?
From Alternative Healthcare Beverly Hills, Chicago to the Total Balance Wellness Center. Because
Oh.
we're doing wellness, we're doing church, community, and corporate wellness programs. We're more
Okay.
out in the community seeing more people than being in the office.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I gotta come hang out with y'all in some
Yeah,
of them
sure you
meetings
do.
that you having.
Yes.
Okay. Where you meeting?
Well, this last weekend we met, we had a big seminar on Cicero Avenue at Midway, but because we're in the community, we
Okay.
do it in people's houses, in their
Okay,
churches, in their
okay,
community centers, in their
okay.
corporations.
Okay. So you doing home health care.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. I've been doing house calls and been doing that for 29 years.
Okay.
Doing phone consultations. I have patients all over the country.
Okay.
Gwen does food preparation classes with her book signings and
Okay.
things like that. So
Okay. That sounds like a very good idea. Get in a lot of these churches.
yes, that's where
That's where our people are waiting for somebody to bring the light in. So I think it's a good idea. I'm so glad you were able to come and be on the show and tell me all the good stuff that
yes.
you've been able to tell me. I love this cookbook, and this cookbook can be gotten where? You
It
have
is
to-
at Trinity United, the
you-
Kiva bookstore at Trinity.
Where's the
on-
bookstore? Is it in the
on
church?
It's in the church.
Oh, there's a
right.
bookstore in the church.
There's a
Yeah.
bookstore in the church, and it's
Okay.
open every day.
Okay.
You can also
That's
get that-
95th Street, isn't it?
95th
You're
Street.
Right.
You can get that at soundconcepts.com.
Okay, so it's online and
It's online.
in the
It's
church.
also on Amazon.com.
Okay, all right. So 30 ways you can poison yourself before breakfast. Listen, you got macaroni and cheese in this in this book.
I have a lot of Southern recipes that I've made healthier.
Yes,
So-
yes. I feel like running out of here right now, but I can't go right now. Cornbread, oh my
My
goodness
sister's
gracious.
recipe, she is an excellent cook.
And biscuits.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sweet potato soup. I bet that's
Oh,
really
I
good.
love that. That's one of my favorites.
Okay, okay.
And one of the things about that book is that a lot of folks say, well, I can't do this because I don't have the time. There's foods preparation there from 15 minutes to an hour preparation.
Right,
So
right.
on the weekend, if you're saying, well, I ain't got time to do that, but if you stand in line at a restaurant for 1 to 2 hours, then you sit in the seat for 45 minutes to an hour, you can cook everything in that book.
The last time I went out with my family, we had an appointment. We had a time to get there, and we were an hour before we were seated.
Okay.
So you're right. I could have been. Well, I will be at home. I'll be making up all this stuff, and I'll be calling you up to tell you how well I enjoyed
Well,
it.
let's do a food preparation class for you.
Well, why don't we try to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's set that up.
It shall be done.
It shall be done. Glad to have you.